Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into something huge: cybersecurity in the cloud. You know, the old way of thinking, just building a big digital wall around everything, that just doesn't cut it anymore. The real question we have to ask ourselves isn't just how do we keep attackers out? It's how do we find the ones who are already in? Seriously, just take a second and think about that. How would you know? What if, right now, someone was quietly moving through your cloud environment, completely invisible to all your traditional defenses? Because that's the scary reality of modern cyber threats. They're not loud and obvious, they're stealthy, they're persistent. An attacker can get in and just hang out for days, weeks, sometimes even months before anyone has a clue. And that window of time, that's the real problem we're up against. There's actually a technical term for this: adversary dwell time. And honestly, the number one goal of modern cloud security isn't just about blocking attacks anymore. It's about crushing this dwell time, taking it from months down to just a few minutes. So, here's our game plan for today. We're going to start by really understanding this unseen threat. Then, we'll build our defense using three key pillars. We'll look at how to spot weird behavior, how to follow the digital breadcrumbs attackers leave behind, and then how to connect all those dots to see the full story. And finally, we'll talk about why this whole approach is such a game changer. All right, let's dig a little deeper into this whole dwell time issue. It's not just about what an attacker might do. The bigger, more immediate crisis is a total lack of visibility. Plain and simple, if you can't see them, you can't stop them.
And man, this quote from Microsoft's Cloud Security Benchmark just nails it. Without the right kind of logging, you're not just vulnerable. You're basically flying blind. When something bad does happen, you have no way to piece together what happened, you don't know how bad the damage is, and you're just left with this expensive, frustrating mess.
So how do you fight an enemy you can't see? Well, you don't. Instead, you build a system that makes them visible. And this modern way of doing things is really built on three core pillars of defense. It all comes down to these three steps. First, you have to enable detection to spot suspicious activity. Second, you enable really thorough logging to create that evidence trail. And third, you bring all that data to one central place and analyze it so you can actually see the big picture. Let's break each of these down. So, pillar number one. This is all about a huge shift in mindset. You have to work from the assumption that sooner or later, an attacker is probably going to get in. So the goal becomes spotting them the second they do something they shouldn't. Now, this is a really important distinction. Think about it. Traditional security is totally reactive. It's like having a database of known bad guys' mugshots. It can only catch threats it already knows about. But modern detection, it's proactive. It takes the time to learn what's normal in your environment, and then it flags anything that looks out of place, even if it's a brand new attack nobody has ever seen before. And the magic behind this is a technology called User and Entity Behavior Analytics, or UEBA. Now, that's a mouthful, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It uses machine learning to understand the normal rhythm of your organization. You know, who logs in from where, what files they usually touch, and then it screams for help the moment that rhythm gets broken. But for UEBA to work, it needs data, a lot of data. So, how does a system like UEBA know what's going on? Well, that brings us right to our second pillar: leaving a rich trail of digital breadcrumbs through really comprehensive logging. I love this analogy because it's perfect. The locks on your doors, that's your firewall, that's prevention. But logging, that's the whole network of security cameras and motion sensors inside the building that record every single thing that happens. It's the raw, undeniable proof of every action taken. And you can't just log one or two things. You need the whole picture. Identity logs tell you who is doing something. Network logs show you how they're moving around. Application logs tell you what they did. And resource logs, this is the big one, track which data they accessed. If you're missing any one of these, you've got a major blind spot in your investigation. Okay, so we've got our detection systems humming along, and we have this flood of logs coming in. Now for the final pillar, which is where we turn all that noise into a clear signal. This is where we connect the dots. This is the job of a SIEM. It stands for Security Information and Event Management Platform, but it's easier to just think of it as the central command center for your entire security operation. It pulls in all those different types of logs we just talked about and puts them all in one place so you can analyze them together. And this is why that's so incredibly powerful. Look at this.
A single failed login, you'd probably ignore it. Two, maybe a typo. But a SIEM sees the bigger pattern. It sees multiple failed logins from the exact same IP address in just a couple of minutes, immediately followed by a successful one. That's not a typo. That's a classic brute force attack. And the SIEM spots it by connecting those seemingly isolated events.
So how does the SIEM know that specific pattern is bad? Well, it's not magic, it's logic. And that's where something called Sigma rules come in. Think of Sigma as a universal language for security alerts. It's basically an instruction manual that tells any SIEM, hey, if you see this exact sequence of events, that's a red flag. Sound the alarm. And it can get way more sophisticated than just login attempts. With something called Sigma correlation, you can actually chain different events together into a narrative. You can write a rule that says, don't just alert me if antivirus is disabled. Alert me only if antivirus is disabled, and then, within 5 minutes, a suspicious file is downloaded from the internet. This is an absolute game changer because now you're not hunting for single events. You're hunting for the complex multi-step tactics that real attackers use.
Okay, we have covered a ton of ground. We've talked detection, logging, and analysis. So let's bring it all home and talk about the real-world outcome of putting this all together.
The whole process really is a funnel. You start at the top with millions upon millions of raw logs. It's mostly just noise. Your CM then correlates them into a smaller number of meaningful events. From there, your analytics prioritize those into a handful of high-fidelity alerts. And what comes out at the bottom? Actionable intelligence. A clear, trustworthy signal that tells your security team exactly what's wrong and what to do about it. So let's wrap this up. What are the big takeaways here? First, modern security is all about visibility, not just prevention. Second, comprehensive logging is absolutely non-negotiable. Those are your digital breadcrumbs. Third, a centralized system like a CM is what turns all that scattered data into a real unified defense. And the result of all of this? We take that adversary dwell time, that terrifying window of silent access, and we shrink it from months down to mere minutes. I'll leave you with this one last thought to chew on. It is so easy to focus all our energy on the locks on the doors, but the real threats today are often the ones who've already found a way inside. So the question you need to ask is, are you just locking your doors, or are you actually watching what's happening inside the building? Thanks so much for joining me.